Beyond the Gates, spoilers tease that Danny and Bill's once-cherished marriage has come crashing down, leaving two hearts shattered in its wake. In the aftermath of their divorce, Danny finds herself adrift on an ocean of loneliness, her days stretching empty and her nights echoing with memories of a love she thought would endure forever. The house they once shared now stands hollow, the laughter and warmth drained from its rooms. Each morning, Danny rises before dawn, not to prepare breakfast for a family gathering, but to face the relentless silence of her own thoughts. She moves through the rooms as if through a haunted mansion, her fingers brushing the backs of dining chairs and the smooth surfaces of countertops, recalling every joyous moment that once filled the space. Every photograph, she glances at Bill smiling beside her at the county fair. Laughter captured in a summer sunbeam feels like a dagger to her heart. And yet, she cannot tear them down. She cannot erase the evidence of what they once shared. While Danny grapples with the collapse of her world, Bill lies confined to a hospital bed, his body weakened by an illness that seemed to strike without warning. The corridors of the medical wing, with their harsh fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell, have become his new home. He drifts in and out of consciousness, tethered to machines that beep and hum like a mechanical heartbeat. His once steady hands, which had built a life with Danny raising a daughter, supporting a community, forging friendships, now tremble at the slightest movement. The doctors speak to Danny in hushed tones about treatment options and prognosis, but their words blur into a distant drone. All she sees is the man she loved, lying vulnerable beneath crisp white sheets, eyes closed as if dreaming of happier times. She perches on the edge of his bed during visiting hours, her palms pressed against the cold rails, willing him to wake and smile at her as he once did. Haley, Bill's current wife, views Danny's presence as an intrusion, a ghost from Bill's past unwilling to rest in peace. Haley's steps are deliberate as she approaches the foot of the bed, instructing Danny to step aside. "This is our time now," she says, voice clipped, eyes flashing with possessive disdain. But Danny's grief is fierce, blinding her to any authority Haley claims. Danny leans forward, her voice cracking. "I was his wife first," she whispers, "and I will always be here for him." Haley's hands tighten on the wheelchair handle she ought to be pushing him to, and for the first time, anger flickers in her blue eyes. "You left him," she replies. "He married me." The tension between them hangs in the sterile hospital air, thick and suffocating. Neither woman will yield, each believing she holds a claim over Bill's fractured heart. What neither woman suspects is that Danny is harboring a secret so earth-shattering it could rend consciences and destroy reputations alike. She is carrying a child. Every morning, she presses her hands to the gentle curve of her abdomen, feeling the faint stirrings of life within her. She remembers the moment she first realized she was pregnant, how her pulse quickened, how tears sprang unbidden to her eyes. She should have felt joy, cradling the promise of new life. Instead, a storm of dread and exhilaration swirled within her, for she knew that this child, conceived under the shroud of infidelity, would unleash chaos the moment its existence became known. To Bill, she intends to present a different story, of fabrication designed to shield the truth and manipulate reality. Danny plans to claim that she conceived the child before their divorce was finalized, that Bill is the father simply by the accident of timing. In her mind, this lie is necessary, a lifeline to cling to a man she still loves, a way to secure her future and fortify her isolation with the promise of a shared legacy. She crafts her falsehood in whispered rehearsals, tracing each syllable on her lips like a spell. "I was already pregnant when we separated. You're going to be a father again." She imagines Bill's face lighting up with pride, the tenderness returning to his features as he embraces her and confesses regret for the pain he inflicted. Yet she also dreads the betrayal that might bloom in his eyes if the deception is unmasked. The truth, however, is far more scandalous. Danny's child is not Bill's but Jacob Hawthorne's, the same Jacob who is married to Naomi, Danny and Bill's own daughter. The forbidden liaison ignited one fateful summer evening when Jacob, newly minted as a promising young architect, came to the McBride household to discuss renovations on the old guest cottage. Naomi was away at college, and the sparsely furnished rooms echoed with academic silence. Danny, dressed in faded jeans and a loose blouse, the picture of casual detachment, welcomed Jacob with a polite smile and a plate of iced tea and cookies. They chatted about structural blueprints and the layout of the land, but as the afternoon sun shifted through dusty windows, something charged sparked between them. Jacob's eyes lingered too long on Danny's face, tracing the faint lines of worry that had begun to etch themselves around her mouth. He asked if she was all right, and Danny found herself confiding in him not as her son-in-law, but as a friend who listened without preconception. That night, when Naomi returned unexpectedly from a weekend retreat, she found the guest cottage door ajar. She called out for Jacob, her voice echoing in the cavernous emptiness, only to be met with silence. Her heart thudded with unease as she entered the dim hallway, the flicker of a single basement light casting ominous shapes on the walls. She followed the sound of soft voices, Jacob's deep timbre knitting words of reassurance around Danny, her responses quivering with emotion, and froze at the bottom of the staircase. Jacob reached out to brush a lock of hair from Danny's face, and in that intimate gesture, Naomi recognized something that shattered her world. Her mother, the woman who had raised her with love and moral conviction, and her husband, the man she had vowed to cherish, entwined in each other's arms. The door behind Naomi creaked, as though betraying her presence, but neither Danny nor Jacob broke away. Instead, they leaned into the embrace, sealing their secret in a moment charged with guilt and desire. Naomi retreated silently, her vision blurred with tears. The chilling knowledge burned behind her eyelids as she pressed her palm against the cold windowpane, the condensation fogging with her breath. Through the glass, she heard them divulge their elaborate scheme, how Danny would claim Bill as the father, how they would time Danny's sudden illness as proof of a pre-divorce conception. Jacob's voice rumbled with excitement and terror as he spoke of forging medical records and consulting a complicit nurse. Danny's laughter, low and shaken, cut through Naomi's sorrow like a scalpel. "Everything will fall into place," she assured him. "Bill will never suspect. Haley will stay out of the way, and Naomi will believe anything I tell her." Naomi's blood ran cold. She realized that the stability of her marriage, her family's reputation, and her own future had all been bartered away in a web of lies and betrayal she had once thought unimaginable. Shaken to her core, Naomi climbed the stairs without a sound and fled into the night, her mind racing with questions. How could a mother orchestrate such deception? How could the man she loved stoop to abet this conspiracy? She considered confronting Jacob immediately, but the prospect of facing him in his own home, where their shared secrets would hang between them like storm clouds, felt unbearable. Instead, she retreated to the sanctuary of her childhood bedroom, now repurposed as a guest suite. There, she sank to the floor, clutching her robe around her, and wept for the innocent lies that had once defined her life, lies about love, about loyalty, about the sanctity of family. Meanwhile, Danny continues her pattern of daily hospital visits, her facade of contrition and concern unwavering. She enters Bill's room each morning with fresh flowers, white lilies to symbolize purity, she tells the nurse, her expression angelic, and settles into the visitor's chair. Bill, usually too weak to speak more than a few hesitant words, responds with a faint smile and a whisper, "I'm glad you're here." Each time, Danny presses his hand between her own, allowing his warmth to seep through her gloves, and murmurs, "You'll get better." She watches the monitors for reassuring blips, her own heart pounding with a hidden fear that if Bill improves too quickly, he may demand explanations for the whispers he's overheard between hospital staff, or worse, question the timing of medical appointments arranged under false pretenses. She must keep him dependent on her, emotionally and physically, so that her lie can take root before the truth has a chance to break free. Outside the ward, Haley hovers with a tension that has come to define her every waking moment. She confronts the lead physician in the hallway, voice low enough to be polite, but sharp enough to convey her suspicion. "Is everything in order?" "MS. Pennington has been here at odd hours, asking questions about his medication schedule." The doctor offers a reassuring smile. "Your concern is understandable. But MS. Pennington was his first wife. She likely still cares deeply for him." Haley forces a smile in return, but her stomach twists with unease. Caring is one thing, plotting is another. She makes a mental note to inform the hospital security team if Danny steps out of line, a threat she keeps unspoken but ready to unleash. As the days pass, word of Danny's pregnancy begins to circulate through muted hospital corridors and sympathetic confidants. Nurses trade glances behind half-drawn curtains, aides pause in the hallway, compassion flickering in their eyes. One sympathetic orderly, a young woman named Marisol, quietly slips Danny pamphlets on prenatal care and nutrition. Danny tucks them into her purse with a polite nod, her mind already cataloging how she will use them to reinforce her lie to Bill. She will mention Marisol's thoughtful gifts, insinuating that her pregnancy had been confirmed months ago. Yet even as help gathers around her, Danny's secret weighs more heavily than ever. She finds herself pacing her small apartment at midnight, hands pressed to her temples as she wrestles with guilt. She knows that every step further into this deception tightens the noose around her own conscience. In the Richardson household, Naomi's absence from home does not go unnoticed. Bill, still sedated by medication, asks Haley where their daughter is. Haley hesitates, then offers a vague answer. Naomi went to stay with a friend. "She's upset, I think." Bill's eyes narrow as he struggles to focus. "Is it because of Danny?" he whispers. Haley touches his arm reassuringly. "She's just processing the divorce. Give her time." Yet Bill's heart aches for Naomi, and he resolves to call her himself. When the phone rings at Naomi's friend's house, she answers on the third ring, hesitant. Hearing her father's gentle voice, torn between paternal concern and romantic sorrow, she is struck by regret. But she steels herself and tells him she needs space to think, to breathe, to reconcile the daughter she was with the daughter her mother has forced her to become. As the plot deepens, lines between family and betrayal blur. Danny attends her first formal prenatal checkup with a calculated grace, allowing the obstetrician to conduct an ultrasound that reveals the faint flicker of her child's heartbeat. In the dim glow of the monitor, Danny's eyes glisten with tears of joy or of anticipation for the power this image will grant her. She makes a note of the date and the technician's name, planning to insert these details into her timeline when she confesses to Bill, a timeline that will start weeks earlier than her actual conception, aligning the arrival of this child with their final weeks of marriage. Jacob, on the other hand, has retreated into a shell of guilt and fear. Each night, he lies awake beside Naomi in their marital bed, her back turned to him, her breathing shallow with unshed tears. He knows he should confess, should tell Naomi the full extent of his betrayal, should break the news that the child in Danny's womb is not his daughter's sibling but his own. Yet cowardice holds him silent. He imagines the headlines: McBride scandal, mother and son-in-law expecting illicit child. He envisions the family gatherings at summer barbecues, neighbors whispering behind gloved hands, friends avoiding eye contact. So he burrows deeper into secrecy, channeling his guilt into silent workaholism blueprints and project bids, becoming a refuge from the turmoil that churns within him. In the midst of this mounting tempest, Naomi steps forward with a single, desperate act of defiance. She gathers the courage to confront her mother at the hospital, arriving unannounced in the visitor's lounge. Danny looks up from a medical journal, surprise flickering in her eyes. Naomi's voice is trembling but resolute. "We need to talk." Haley, passing by with a tray of sandwiches, pauses at the doorframe and watches with satisfied interest. Bill sits nearby, too weak to intervene, but alert enough to sense the tension. As Naomi crosses to the chair opposite her mother, the stage is set for a reckoning that may determine the fate of every life entangled in this web of deceit. And yet, as Naomi opens her mouth to speak, the narrative pauses on the brink of revelation, a moment poised between confession and catastrophe. The air crackles with unspoken truths, the hospital's antiseptic calm shattered by the gravity of what hangs between them. In the glare of fluorescent lights and the hush of sedated beeps, the stakes have never been higher. Each heartbeat echoes in the silence, counting down to the moment when lies will meet reality, and the world beyond the gates will never look the same again. Naomi's voice trembled as she forced the words out, the sterile hum of hospital machinery punctuating each syllable. "How could you betray me like this? How could you betray Dad?" Danny rose slowly from her chair, smoothing the front of her blouse, as though straightening her resolve. She placed a hand over her swelling belly in a gesture both protective and defiant. "Naomi, please understand," she began, but Naomi's scorn cut her off. "Understand? You've made my husband your lover, and now you want me to believe this child is Dad's." Haley hovered at the doorway, arms folded, watching with satisfaction as mother and daughter tore at one another's hearts. Bill, propped up on pillows, watched with haunted eyes, too weak to speak, but keenly aware that the very foundations of his family were collapsing around him. Jacob emerged from the hall, guilt etched into every line of his face. He approached slowly, voice hushed. "Naomi, you never meant for any of this to happen." Naomi's eyes blazed. "You never meant for this child to exist?" she spat. His shoulders sagged with the weight of his betrayal. "I love you, Naomi, you know that. But it happened. And now there's no undoing it." Haley folded her arms more tightly, lips pursed, as Danny watched the exchange with an air of wounded dignity. At that moment, Bill found strength he didn't know he possessed. He cleared his throat, summoning all the authority of a father and husband. "Enough," he rasped. "Everyone, just stop." The room fell silent, every pair of eyes drawn to the frail figure in the bed. "Danny," he said, turning to his ex-wife, "you carry my grandchild. But not mine. And, because of this lie, because of everything, you must leave." Danny drew in a breath, her hand tightening on her belly. "You can't cast me out when I'm at my most vulnerable," she whispered. Bill's eyes, once gentle, hardened. "You chose your secret over our family. You'll leave the hospital, and we'll pursue legal action for the fraud you intended." Haley's face lit up with vindication. Naomi let out a sob of relief and heartbreak. Within days, the hospital administration, spurred on by evidence of forged documents and falsified appointment dates, contacted Danny with a formal notice. She was no longer welcome in the ward except for supervised visits. Marisol, the compassionate orderly who had once slipped her prenatal pamphlets, stood by Danny's side, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said, as Danny packed a small bag in the cramped corner of her apartment. Naomi, summoned by the hospital's social worker, sat across from Danny one last time. "I hope you get help," she murmured. Danny closed her eyes, the enormity of her loss crashing over her. "I know I'll never forgive myself," she whispered, and reached out as though seeking a final measure of maternal love. But Naomi recoiled, her expression resolute. "Goodbye, Mom." Jacob, haunted by his role in the scandal, found himself shunned by colleagues and friends. His wife's family, once warm and welcoming, now avoided his calls. Grandfather Hawthorne demanded he enter therapy and threatened to withdraw financial support for his firm. Naomi filed for divorce that very week, citing infidelity and emotional cruelty, and hired a prominent attorney to ensure that any claim Danny might make to inheritance or child support would be invalidated by the truth of paternity. Jacob's guilt turned to desperation as he watched Naomi transform from grief into steely determination. Every morning she rose earlier, working long hours at the architect's office to drown out memories, her engagement ring gone, her eyes fierce with self-reliance. Jacob attended counseling sessions alone, his once bright future eclipsed by the lonely ache of his mistakes. Meanwhile, Bill received a surprise courtesy call from Leslie Thomas, his longtime friend and lawyer, offering her services to ensure his own reputation remained untarnished by association. With Haley's encouragement, they prepared a statement to release should the press catch wind of the scandal, a careful narrative portraying Bill as the wounded husband, the betrayed father, standing valiantly beside the innocent Naomi. Haley, sensing an opportunity, suggested a public appearance, a benefit gala for the hospital's oncology wing, where Bill could be seen supporting medical research and family healing. He agreed reluctantly, knowing that public perception would matter in the inevitable custody disputes over his grandchildren. As the months passed, Danny struggled to navigate life as a single pregnant woman shunned by her own family. Rent in her downtown loft grew overdue. Marisol helped connect her with a low-income prenatal clinic, where she attended appointments under her real name, no longer hiding behind forged timelines. She found herself reflecting on the moment that catapulted her into this ruin, the quiet afternoon tea with Jacob, the idle touch that ignited a forbidden desire, the impulse to protect a lie that would become her prison. In the solitude of her evenings, Danny journaled her regrets, confronting the moral chasm she had crossed. She resolved that once her child was born, she would tell the truth to the world, even if it meant losing any chance at reconciliation. On the day of the gala, Bill stood beside Haley beneath chandeliers sparkling like broken dreams. Reporters rang telephones in the lobby. Society pages buzzed with whispers of McBride's scandal. Bill cleared his throat as the photographer's flashbulbs ignited. "Our family has endured difficulties," he began, eyes steady, voice firm. He cast a glance toward the stage, where Naomi would soon appear as a guest speaker. "But I stand here, proud of my daughter's strength and hopeful for her future." Haley squeezed his hand, smiling radiantly. Naomi, backstage, felt a surge of vindication as she watched her father reclaim dignity. She walked onto the stage and recounted her experiences as a patient advocate, carefully omitting any mention of her personal turmoil, yet allowing her resilience to shine through. The audience rose in applause, and Naomi returned to Bill's side, where they shared a brief, grateful embrace. Far from the gala's glitter, Danny labored alone in her apartment, the contractions coming on like rolling thunder. Marisol, summoned in by a neighbor's call, arrived just in time to drive her to the clinic. Hours later, Danny held her newborn daughter in trembling arms, the child's cry echoing with promise. In that moment, Danny's resolve crystallized. She would reveal the truth of her paternity, relinquish any claim to Bill or Naomi, and forge a new path. She named her baby Grace, hoping to invoke forgiveness she feared she'd never fully earn. By the time the next morning dawned, news of the anonymous mother's postpartum statement had spread through the hospital grapevine. Leslie Thomas, ever vigilant, intercepted the press calls. She issued a prepared release indicating that the mother, overwhelmed by life's trials, chose to move out of town with her child to avoid further heartbreak. No names were given, yet the public linked the tale to the McBride-Hawthorne scandal. The hush money that Jacob's family paid to the clinic for confidentiality held firm, and for now, the truth of Grace's paternity remained an unspoken secret past between a few weary souls. In the quiet aftermath, Bill and Naomi visited the empty guest cottage one last time. Bill ran his hand along the oak railing of the porch, recalling how Danny and Jacob had first crossed its threshold together. Naomi placed a hand on his arm. "We'll be okay," she said softly. Bill nodded, tears glistening. "We must be," he replied. Father and daughter stood together on the threshold of their rebuilt lives, the gates behind them closed to the ghosts of the past and open to the fragile hope of tomorrow.